in the future. Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Willowdale.
Over the course of the past week, we have all witnessed untold carnage. A moment of relative calm in the Middle East was punctured by a devastating wave of violence and rage. Mr. Speaker, we in this House must be emphatic and unequivocal. The violence unleashed by Hamas on hundreds upon hundreds of innocent Israeli citizens amounted to nothing short of terrorism in its most gruesome form. Nothing, I repeat, nothing could possibly justify violence of such a vile nature or such devastating magnitude. On October 7th, children were torn from their beds, grandmothers were murdered in cold blood at bus stops, and young people full of life and energy were gunned down at a music festival. Allow me to say that I am heartened by the emergence of a clear consensus in this House that recognizes that Israel has a right to fully defend itself. Israel's efforts to retrieve hostages in Gaza, to dismantle Hamas's chokehold on Gaza, and to hold the perpetrators of this violence to account must be staunchly supported by Canada. After all, this was not only an attack on our friends and loved ones in Israel, but an attack on Canadians. 5 Canadians were assassinated by Hamas, while 3 Canadians remain unaccounted for. Many more Canadians have found themselves stranded in the region, and as of this evening, 10 Canadian Armed Forces flights have departed Tel Aviv with approximately 1,300 Canadian passengers aboard. However, since this war commenced and the full siege of Gaza took effect, the death toll from this war has claimed 4,000 lives. That is why I fervently hope that our Israeli friends are vigilant and exercise prudence in dismantling Hamas's apparatus of terror and violence in the Gaza region. May they be guided by the wisdom of minimizing deaths and paving the way for durable peace in the region. That is why our Prime Minister earlier this evening stated that he fully supports Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law and insisted that humanitarian law be upheld. And I would remind all members of this House that the imposition of measures that deprive civilians of goods essential for their survival is prohibited under international humanitarian law. We should all strive for the establishment of an immediate humanitarian corridor that can provide life-saving assistance to the residents of Gaza. And let me be clear, Hamas should not be conflated with the Palestinian people. While the vast majority of Palestinians aspire to live in dignity, Hamas is tethered to violence and terror. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a concluding remark on how events in Israel and Gaza have affected Canadians at home. I've had the opportunity to speak to many individuals that are aching because of the impact of the unfolding violence. I know that it has taken a profound emotional toll on many. I've personally spoken to Jews, Christians, and Muslims that are concerned with the safety of their friends and relatives, whether their loved ones reside in Israel, the West Bank, or Gaza. All are repulsed by the carnage they have personally witnessed and the constant sirens and panic their loved ones have had to endure. That is why all Canadians should be mindful and considerate of the palpable pain being experienced by many Canadians of differing faiths. In such difficult circumstances, no one experiencing heartache should have to bear the additional burden of being harassed or having to feel ostracized. By now, we have all heard of sickening instances of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in our midst. Let us strive for tolerance and empathy within our diverse Canadian tapestry and ensure that we stand together in support of peace and the well-being of all our citizens. I'm confident, Mr. Speaker, that our shared Canadian values of inclusivity and respect for one another's differences are our greatest assets in times of uncertainty and unrest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
I keep raising this issue in the hope that the government will respond We know, as he's mentioned in his remarks, that both the Jewish and Muslim communities in Canada are living in fear of an attack. The government's Integrated Threat Assessment Centre has assessed Canada's national terrorism threat level at medium, where it has been since October 2014. Does he think that it would be a good idea for the Government of Canada tomorrow, for the Integrated Threat Assessment Centre tomorrow, to give Canadians an update, including Canadians in the Jewish and Muslim communities, about what the threat level is, so that Canadians can be assured that the government is assessing the situation and ensuring the protection and safety of Canadians?
L'honorable député de Willowdale.
The honourable member for Willowdale.
Allow me to thank the member opposite for his question. It is truly a great privilege to work with the member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. As to the question that has been asked, I have every confidence that our government is vigilant and is constantly aware of what those threats are. What I was speaking about today was the pain that many, many Canadians have been enduring over the course of the last 7 days. And that is something that we have to be mindful of, something we should all be concerned about, and do everything within our power to make sure that we're pulling together and we're there for each other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Louis-Hébert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his speech, and I would like to echo his unequivocal condemnation of the attacks by Hamas that shocked the entire world and the Canadians very deeply. I would like to echo his call for respect for international law and for his empathy for what innocent civilians in Gaza are going through right now, and as the Israelis suffered, because violence engenders violence, unfortunately. With regard to observing international law, we know that the current circumstances are exceptional, and I have this question. Does he not think that it is precisely during a crisis that we must call on our principles, and principles such as respect for international law? The member for Willowdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to thank my friend for that very insightful question. Yes, I would say that part of the reason why the bonds of friendship and the amity do exist between our country and the State of Israel is because we are democracies. And democracies, of course, are constantly aware of the fact that their actions and everything that their governments undertake are underpinned by the values that inform our constitutions. So yes, even at a time of war, I think it is incumbent upon all countries to make sure that they are adhering to the principles of humanitarian law. I know full well that our country certainly does so. We have numerous experts that are engaged in this process. And I think it would do everyone well if they strictly adhered to the principles of humanitarian law. Thank you.
As difficult as this may be, the honourable member from Edmonton Strathcona has about 35 seconds for a question.